Welcome everybody to another episode of Voices of the Industry. And we got a special guest for you guys here today. I think is one of the coolest people I've ever met. Not only that, but she has probably the most, pardon my French, badass name you could possibly have. Join us today. We have Miss Hollly Gunn.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my 007 name. Did it on purpose.
There we go. And co-hosting with me today, well, I know everyone's probably shocked to see me, but even more surprisingly, we have the most elusive and infamous of all of us on the team. We have Mr. Sun Lu.
Hello. Thank you for picking me off the street and putting me on the camera.
It's what we do. We always look out, try to help those in need. That's what we're here for, son. Yeah, so this week we have somebody who we had the pleasure of working with at wow, like over a decade ago. It's been
I think it's been no, 2013, 12 years ago.
12 years ago. Wow. And yeah, she was an artist and now she's working on the production side of things, if I'm correct.
I'm back in stereo actually.
All
But yes,
right. Yeah, it's back in stereo conversion.
quite a journey.
Indeed. So we're here to get some insight on that journey, let some people hear about what you've been up to. And more importantly, we'd like to always start off with, is working in the film industry something that you always wanted to do?
Okay, I grew up in a really small town in Iowa. I come from a really small little farming town, and if you would have told me when I was a little kid that I would work on films and video games, I probably wouldn't have believed you. I know I wouldn't have believed you. I always knew that I wanted to be an artist. I really didn't understand what a big world the art world is, how many different facets you can use your talents to make a career out of, to make a life out of. Growing up, I loved to draw and paint, and I really thought I was going to be, maybe an art teacher, a fashion designer, or an illustrator for like children's books. That was something else that I was looking into. But no, I never expected myself to go into the film industry as a kid.
Yeah, so I think all of us end up going to an art school when we make that decision of, you know what, I think we want to do art for a living. So which art school did you go to? And did you have an idea of what category or what part of the industry that you were looking to get into?
Yeah. So I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago way back when, 2004. And yeah, the way that our art school was set up is that it's multidisciplinary. So they make you take what's called core classes where you kind of try all different kinds of art,
Hmm.
like ceramics, sculpture, printmaking, painting, drawing, fabrics, fibers, and
Mm.
digital art. And you have to like go through all these different courses and it kind of opens up your mind. And I think it's one of the best things that I could have asked for going to art school because it really opened my worldview. I was like, wow, there's like all these different things. I tried photography for the first time. I tried sculpture for the first time. There was just so many different things. I actually, when I went to school, I really fell in love with fibers and like
Mm.
anything to do with like fabric. And I started making sculptures. I grew a very keen interest in like art history. There's half of me that thinks like I probably have another like parallel universe where I became like an archivist or something
Mm.
for like a museum. Um,
Hmm.
but I met my soulmate, Kelly, there. He was my next door neighbor my first year in college. And Kelly, he always knew that he wanted to be in film. He like always knew, like ever since he was a little kid. And when I saw what he was doing, of course, it piqued my interest. And I was like, wow, like I didn't even know people could do that. Like he
Mm.
specialized in hand drawn animation. So, of course, I started drawing and doing animation. And I fell in love with the medium. I fell in love with that art form. So, yeah, by the end, I ended up majoring in film, video, and new media. And I took off with that career.
No, it's very cool. Yeah, for those who listen to our other interviews, they are well averse to the fact that I went to the Art Institute as well, the one based here in Los Angeles, located in Santa Monica.
Oh, okay.
So I'm familiar with that setup. And yeah, it's really cool to get that initial, because yeah, as a kid, you're like, I just like drawing. I just like making art. I don't really have a portfolio or know exactly what discipline I want to get into. So I think that's really fun when you have that experience of let me just dive in, try different stuff, see what works. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, a lot of us came to the conclusion of, you know what, working in movies seems pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously times have changed quite a bit, but
Mm,
at the time, I remember when I graduated in 2008, I had spent the last of my college years studying hand-drawn animation. And of course, like when I graduated, it was kind of falling off the face of the earth. There was no hand-drawn animations coming out in the movies or in TV. And so I remember thinking when I graduated, like, oh crap, like, what have I done? What am I going to do if there's nothing out there right now? But even just knowing how to do hand-drawn animation, that allowed me to get into the stereo world. That allowed me to get my first job as a rotoscoping artist. So you just never know. Like, no matter what you study or go into, there's so many possibilities that you couldn't even imagine or couldn't think of.
hmm Oh, for sure. We all met at the conversion house and, we had a fearless leader guide us along the way. He might actually be in the conversation with us now.
Reggie? Is it Reggie here?
Oh man, I don't know. We don't want to scare him off, but yeah, give us some thoughts of that, son, of getting to work with Holly, that whole experience.
Oh, man, where to start? Well, let's start at the beginning.
hmm
Um, when I became a lead, I
hmm
was just kind of like told, like, hey, you're a lead now, and you're in charge of like these 20 something people. I was like, oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Sure. But, it was a lot of people to look over,
hmm
especially when there's so much work to do. Every team had two leads, and they would call it a second lead, but it
hmm
was always more like just another lead because we're doing the same work basically. So the studio had a pretty high turnover rate, right? And there was
hmm
a lot of shifting around all of the time.
hmm
So I've had quite a few co-leads on the team. There was Reggie for a long time, and then came Hollly. I kind of welcomed everyone with open arms because we're all in the same trench, right?
hmm
We're just arm in arm, like shoulder to shoulder, doing the
hmm
same work. And Holly came along, and the first thing I noticed was her bubbly personality. And that was such a welcome change
hmm
because, the studio environment, when it's super busy all of the time, can be a little dreary. So it was just really nice to have someone like her on the team. She just cheer everyone up, pick everyone up, and also help out. I'm talking like she's not here, but Holly, you were a great artist. You were amazing.
Thank
You picked
you.
up everything so quickly too, which made my job a lot easier.
Mm,
I'm so glad.
I'm glad we had such a great team. Like everyone just worked so well together.
We had the best team. I really believe.
That was my first impression of Holly. Just
mm,
really fun and easy to get along and very, very eager as well, to like learn and just do the best that you can.
Thank you,
You know,
son. Coming from you, that means a lot. I would like to say some words about Sun, though, too, because I think that getting to work with Sun taught me so much. And I think for anybody who's listening out there and wanting to get into a career, with art, I think there's things that you learn about the skills and the artistry that you work on. And there's also people skills and leadership skills that come with any job as well. Or, even if you're not interested in being a leader, I think, we learn things that just as humans from each other. And one of the things that Sun really taught me was to kind of savor your job and to savor the environment that you're in. I think his love of having fun with what you do really was infectious for the whole team.
mhm,
We really relished in days going outside together as a team or enjoying a nice cup of tea with like the best honey that we could find. And I think there's really something to be said for no matter what industry or what job you land yourself in, that a key to a happy life is really kind of taking a step back and enjoying the people around you and learning to have fun with what you do. So thank you, son, for teaching me that.
I'm just glad I didn't get anyone fired.
Oh, son.
I'm glad too.
Mm.
I was a little bit of a rebel.
Yes, but that's part of the fun, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
part of joy. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to do what you can to keep your spirits up, you know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. No, for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah, so
Mhm.
you did such a good job of like, I know they keep coming out with like longer hours and more quota, right? You had certain numbers, thresholds they want us to hit all the time, but no matter how much they were weighing down on you, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to relay that to the team in terms of the pressure and the stress. It's like you held on to that and you just made sure, again, you had like a solid work environment and you kept encouraging us to just keep pushing. And that's the thing. That's why we had a lot of superstars on our team and they went on to be leads of their own teams and continue their own success after leaving where we all worked together. So,
Absolutely. Yep. I definitely took a lot of those lessons when I became a lead. I would find myself thinking, what would son do? How would he approach this? And I think that was the most important element when I became a leader, was learning how to make sure that my team loved what they did and had fun and enjoyed themselves. And I think the work spoke for itself too.
Guys, you are too much. Too much. One of the most important things to me and, Holly as well, and like pretty much everyone on the team was just put out the work that you can be proud of. You know, that
mm,
was that was my main focus.
hmm
All those numbers, just you know, go deal with it.
Yep.
hmm I'm sure there's many stories we can share about our time at that conversion house, but moving on, so what were the kind of job opportunities or kind of places you worked at after working there?
So I worked at Stereo D until the end of 2021. I was up in Canada, and Kelly, he had a job opportunity back in LA. And I think during that time, like basically we were there until 2020. And during that time, like the whole world was kind of upside down. And it really kind of got me to step back and think, like, whoa, do I want to live somewhere just for the job? I see that he has this like dream job opportunity that he wants to go back to California. Maybe that would be fun. Maybe that would be good for both of us. And I kind of took a leap of faith, and I ended up working for Stereo D for another year after I moved back to California. But then, of course, their base is in Canada. So after that, I was kind of a little bit lost, kind of didn't know what to do with my life. Stereo was what I had done since I had graduated college, really.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I looked at a lot of different things. I think the most obvious was to look at VFX. Just, you gain that experience in compositing. I looked at production because I had leadership experience and management experience. And I thought, some of those skills would translate well. I had a really good long talk with a VFX supervisor from Ingenuity Studios. And he was basically telling me, his experiences in VFX. And he, after talking with me for a while, encouraged me to try out production because he felt like I had management experience and the people skills, and that it might be a good fit. So I forayed into the world of production. I started at a company called Ghost, and I worked there for 5 months before I had an opportunity to work at PlayStation in production. And if anybody knows me, anybody who knows me well knows that I'm obsessed with video games. I absolutely love video games. They are a key to my little heart. So when I had the opportunity to jump to PlayStation, I absolutely had to say yes. And I spent the next 2.5 years working at PlayStation. I know earlier in this episode, you were asking kind of like how some of those skills transfer. And I would say that production is kind of a mystical creature because when you're working in production, it's a lot of like the things that happen like behind the scenes that people may not be aware of. But I also think that for, again, anybody who's looking to get into the industry, I think, especially if you're analytical and if you are very organized as a person, and if you like talking to people or just find that you can relate to people well, I think production is something to keep in mind because it kind of utilizes a whole set of skills. You really have to understand or at least be able to learn the pipeline of whatever discipline you're working production for. So, like at PlayStation, I worked in the asset out, it's called our outsource department, where they created and outsourced assets. And then there was the animation department and later the scanning. So, all of
Hmm.
those have completely different workflows and they have completely different skill sets and completely different types of people that you work with. And you really need to be able to support those teams and keep your show running and keep it organized. So I think that it stretched my analytical mind working in production to its
Hmm.
limits because you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the artist and make sure that they feel supported. And you want to make sure that you're getting things done on time as a team.
Would you say it was fairly easy transition for you going from film to games?
It was surprisingly difficult. It
Hmm.
was more so, it wasn't necessarily going from film to video games that was the difficult part. It was when you're an artist, you're really kind of just worried about what your little bubble is doing, right? And
Uh,
when you go into production, you worry about a lot of things that are outside of your control, but also it's just different brain paths that you have to get used to thinking with, right? It's like, how do I support something that I'm maybe don't know a whole lot about? I studied animation in school, and so that obviously helps with a lot of the terminology that they're using. But anytime that you are supporting in production for a discipline that you don't know the nitty-gritty details, okay, like I can't even replicate some of it, but especially with like the terminology for creating like CG assets, the different kind of layers that they use and the settings that they use and the tech specs, because you're doing deliveries, you're running meetings, you're taking notes, you're scheduling things for people. And so, of course, I had the chance to work with some really amazing senior production members that they've seen it all, they've done it all. But it takes a lot more than you would imagine to really make sure that everything kind of runs smoothly. Will say that in video games, I don't know if this is true with all companies, but this was my experience that I found myself having time in my day to have a life, which I didn't know what that meant before then. I think anybody who comes from stereo or even the VFX industry, you're used to those really tough crunches and working a lot of overtime. And video games, it's different because they are massive projects that take years to create. So you're not running a sprint, you're running a marathon. And you have to pace yourself, and I enjoyed that part.
yeah, it's so interesting because I know I hear so many stories now of because when we were working at the conversion house, working on films, it's more of like a mad dash at the end of the finish line where we have like a 2 week, if you're lucky, but usually like a 2 month sometimes crunch period. And just from overhearing and just being looking at articles and stuff, I always hear about like the extended like crunch hours that game studios will have to do at the end, where sometimes I heard it will be up to like 6 months, something like that.
Huh. That wasn't
Yeah.
the case for us. Maybe it kind of depends on what company you're
Hmm.
working with, but that wasn't my experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I just wanted to float that out there, see if it's like, oh my gosh, is it really crazier than what we went through from back in the day?
No, I think there's a lot of variables.
Hmm.
I'm sure certain movies you would need to crunch more for because maybe the plates came in late. I think we
Hmm.
all know which kind of movies those are versus the ones that you would have on time. deliveries. I'm sure that it probably works the same in games as well. But no, it really wasn't crazy for me,
Hmm.
for the team.
That's cool. Any follow-up questions, son?
Maybe.
I saw the gears turning for a minute. I was like, I think son has another question.
Well, I was wondering, so working in production, you mentioned that you don't really know a lot of the things that the artists or devs do. Do you get any opportunities to like get your hands dirty and kind of get to like sit with them and learn what they do and
Oh,
Mm,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I feel so fortunate because the artists, and the engineers and the technical artists there were so kind with their time and patient with me. They wanted production because it's a symbiotic relationship. Production and artists, like, they need to work together to really make sure that a show runs smoothly. So,
mm,
can't tell you how many amazing people that would pull me aside and say, I want to show you what I do. Or I would poke them, can I see what you're doing? Can I shadow you? And they spent hours of time with me, showing me their craft, showing the details of their work, some of the pitfalls that they would encounter. And I feel like I learned so much about that world, and I'm really grateful.
awesome.
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of when my buddy and I were working at Paramount, Lucas, when we were working there, and there was a production assistant who she just got out of school. Now, if you are studying film in film school, they actually work you and guide you through the visual effects process a little bit and be familiar with working with artists and vendors, just because it's now so integrated to have some level of visual effects in your movie before everything was more practical. And that's something that my buddy Lucas would do all the time. Since she didn't have much experience talking and working with visual effects, so I was like, oh, here, come over. Let me show you some what we do. Here's some of the terminology we use when we're talking about this and that, just to kind of
Yeah.
help her. So when she hops on the phone and says there's an error, or they need something, she kind of has a better grasp of what she's asking for. So,
Mm,
That's amazing. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like sometimes in stereo or any artist jobs, like you can feel that kind of like clash between production and art, where it can come
mm,
off like, I think our worst case scenario is like, oh, you're just there to get me numbers kind of thing can be the artist's viewpoint sometimes. And I really felt like at some of the other places, and honestly, at Stereo D, I've definitely had some production members who were amazing and wanted to know more and cared about the creative side of things. And
mm,
I just think the more collaboration there are between those two entities, the better product you're going to get in the end result, the happier people are going to be.
mm,
And most of the time, it's going to get done smoother and more quickly because everybody's aware and trying to solve the problems together.
mm, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will
yeah.
say, I loved my time, but I think I did discover that I am still an artist at heart. So it's a really great set of skills to have learned, but I
Mm.
think my heart wanted to go back to something a little bit more artistic as well.
Oh, for sure. I always found it was interesting talking to producers at Sturdy, people who did study like animation and art like we did, but they went for the production role because that's what was available. And then sometimes you would kind of hear them talk about it and, maybe slip away from that initial dream into something like on the person I interviewed, Chance, where he'd said like he wanted to be a writer and that's where he thought he wanted to do and be. But he saw writer was kind of in and out. They kind of
Mhm.
wrote the story, they were part of the pre-production, but they weren't always there for the actual production, and they weren't really there on set. And he's like, that's where I actually wanted to be. So it's always nice when you see that shift of like, I thought I wanted this, but I'm actually more content and happy doing this other thing instead. But to your point, yeah, if you always wanted to be an artist and then you land into production, I think it's important to note that like you can still find a path back to doing what you initially wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you don't just have to say like, oh, I'm just going to resign and just do this. We work in a field where it's all about, we're passionate about what we do, you know? So I think that should always be the focus of like, you got to love it every day. So when we're doing the crazy hours, as long as you have a leader like Sun and someone
Yeah.
awesome to work with like Hollly, it's a great time. You don't care how many hours you put into it.
You're so right. I do want to inject a little bit of like the realities that we currently face in our industry,
Mhm.
because I think that one of the things that really drew me to production is it's a very versatile field. You know, I was able to pretty quickly jump from production and visual effects to production in video games. I'm sure that those skills would translate into television and all different kinds of fields, right? Like animation, whatever. And I think that that is probably for a lot of people, the draw is that if animation is having a tough time in the industry, you can look for maybe something in television or live action or whatever. And I think that for me, it's very much like a comfort to know that I have learned those skills. And of course, there is some enjoyment that I bring from it. But, you know, should times get tough again, I mean, they really are right now, is a great skill set to have.
Now that made me think that it's pretty cool. You have experience and the skill set between film and video games. So you can always jump between the two when one industry goes down, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy and kind of a shame just to think what a journey the film industry, especially, has been through in the last couple of years. But I think the gaming industry is also, you know, going through its own times as well. I think any form of entertainment is in like a post-COVID, you know, retraction.
Mhm.
You know, during the times that everybody was locked down during COVID, we were consuming so much more content. We were playing those games. We were staying in to watch that movie. We were binge watching our favorite TV series. And I think people are getting back outside, which is great. Everybody should be getting outside. But I think that, yeah, it's a tough time on all fronts, you know, and then to have the strikes, especially for the movie industry, the entertainment industry happen right after that. I think it's really lined up to be a very tough environment out there. And I feel for the students who are graduating, you know, college with a degree in animation or whatever, directing, photography, anything, because it is a tough environment out there right now.
Mhm.
I think I have a cat behind me.
Ah,
You
the
have a little
cat.
magic behind you.
Oh my.
Oh, are you coming to say hi? Yeah.
Oh, there he
Cute.
is.
That's
So
it.
cute. It's so fluffy. I want to die.
Yeah, one thing I think I want to go back to because I totally brain farted and we just like skimmed right past the fact that, when we were working together, it was all based in Burbank. But then, the company we were working for transitioned and moved over to Canada. And
Mhm.
Sun and I, we bowed out, we peaced out. Well, I was a loyal Californian. Sun was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But how was it working up in Canada? Like, how different is it up there? And were there any adjustments you had to make, pick up and work in another country?
Yeah, it was an adventure. You know, I think when we got that initial announcement, you know, oh, we're moving up to Canada, our first reaction was, let's go have an adventure. That's how we felt about it. Let's go to a new place and why not? You know, I think at the time, like we were in our 20s, you know, we were ready for
Mhm.
a new adventure. And it was really fun to go up there. Obviously, there were a lot of growing pains, like with a new physical studio and getting everything set up. But we did really have a good time up there. Like it was fun. We met a lot of people. We ate a lot of good food. My goodness, Toronto
Mm.
had a lot of good food, especially dumplings and ramen. So, you know, no,
Oh, I
Oh,
should have gone.
I know.
really?
I
We're
should have
coming to visit.
moved
I
with
wish you
you.
guys came to visit.
Oh,
Oh, you would have loved it. You really would have. But I think that the longer that we were up there, the more, you know, maybe disconnected we felt from our families. It was a tough time, especially during COVID, because the borders literally shut down. So I wasn't able to attend my grandpa's funeral because the borders were shut down. Basically, I could have gone, but I wouldn't have been allowed back in Canada
Mm,
for who knows how long.
mhm,
So I think that was one of the catalysts that really got us to rethink living up there was that fear of that separation
mhm,
from our family. But yeah, I mean, it was a great time. We had a really good time. I will say I really love being back in California. I feel like the older that you get, the more you want to kind of establish like a home base and really feel
mm,
a little bit more settled down. I feel like
mhm.
I'm getting too old for those kind of adventures, unless it's just a visit or, a short trip. So
No, for sure.
it's a different world now, though, because when we first went up there, we would have never imagined that eventually, a lot of people would be working from home. So it's kind of a different ball game now.
No, definitely. I think, yeah, the things change so drastically. And I think there's like a slight kind of whiplash that kind of happened where I think hopefully things finally settle into a new norm and then we have a clear idea of how things are going to be moving forward. I think maybe that's why we feel like it's been such a slow bounce back because everyone's really trying to be like, because this is, whether it be film or gaming, these are expensive projects that people are investing their resources into. So I don't knock treading carefully, making sure like, okay, this is how it's going to be and they're going to get the return on investment. But it's tough. Yeah. But we're still here, you know?
I'd be curious, like, if you guys got a call tomorrow and they were
Mhm.
like, we have your dream job, but you have to move to like Australia, would you do it?
Wow. Um,
Yes.
Yeah, I love
One
it.
word, koalas.
oh my goodness, son.
Mhm.
I want to see you as a koala for Halloween.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can mention we avatars, but you could always make me a koala if you want.
Yeah, I think if I was younger, I would be all game for it. Priorities shift and change when you get older, especially if your responsibility shifts. You do want some sort of like stability.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if you want to get into it, if you're starting, like you said, go for the adventure,
yeah.
and just see where it takes you and you'll be shocked. You'll be surprised what you thought you would talk yourself out of, what you'll be capable of tackling and doing. And it's always a journey. It's always growth. I think everyone in our field who stays in it, the growth never stops. You always have to keep evolving and developing your skills and challenging yourself in a good way, in a way that you're proud of and you feel happy about. Good or bad, sometimes the experience, the circumstance, but you become stronger for it. So,
I'm curious. I feel like I'm asking you guys the questions now, but I think it's such an interesting conversation.
mhm.
From your viewpoint, what was your perspective after, let's call it the Great Migration up to Canada? Did you feel like it didn't feel the same, or did you have any kind of particular takeaway from that situation?
Well, for me, like I mentioned responsibilities earlier. So, I help take care of my parents and hold down the household as much as um, just bring in income. So at that time, it was a good challenge to say, okay, I've been terrified of the idea of freelance and short-term contracts, and I was going to dive headfirst into it. And I was freelancing for like 6 years, just bouncing around from studio to studio. And then twice I landed long-term gigs where I was at one studio for both actually a year and a half each. So, but before that, I was just bouncing around. Uh, hey, we need you to come in for a weekend. We have 2 week project, 2 month project, and then one place that would just call me whenever they needed something. Renting for like a year and a half, I would come in there like a few dozen times just randomly to just work on
Wow.
stuff. So it's definitely forced you to view yourself as like a free agent and you were kind of your own business and you did really have to lock in, okay, what am I good at and understanding too that the kind of project you're working for, the studio you're working for, there's different rates and so I had to open my mind to I'm not going to get paid a flat rate. It's well, what am I doing for you? That's going to
Mhm.
determine what I charge. Um,
Wow.
so it was a lot of eye-opening. Uh, I'm not the best freelancer, but I do have friends who were like me. That's all they ever did. I know people who never had a steady gig. They were always a few weeks, few months at a time. I was fortunate, like I said, to have moments of stability, um, and chances to move up. if things had worked out, I could have been a supervisor at one or two studios, but things didn't pan out. You know, you learn that if something doesn't come through, then layoffs happen. So that those are the tended to be what would happen in those circumstances. But it was interesting. It was its own adventure. You know, you went an adventure up into Canada and
Yeah. Sounds like you had an adventure for sure.
yeah. And then Sun's just the most majestic. I mean, look at his background. That's all you need to say about Sun's journey.
Bread and butter. Yeah.
Bread and butter.
12
Just be
years
like
later.
bread and butter.
I still take it with me. Oh man.
Hmm.
I'd probably still have that a plate of bread and butter right now. I
Oh
didn't throw it
my
away.
goodness. It
I
never,
hope
yeah, it never ages just like Sun, you know.
true. True.
Me, when the Great Migration happened, I think for me, I felt the same thing with a lot of people, especially the younger crowd who didn't have much of a responsibility yet. It's just a feeling of relief because we're working so hard all the time. And I never took any vacations during that time.
You didn't.
I don't think I've used any sick time either.
Yeah.
Like I
Mm,
may have used maybe 1 or 2 days in how many years I was there?
almost five. Yeah.
I would fly home to visit my parents only over weekends. So like Friday evening, I would book a flight, come back Sunday. That was expensive flying back and forth only for like 2 days every now and then, the cost kind of added up. Yeah, so that gave me a chance to spend more time with my family and just to kick back and relax. And I think with a lot of people who were overworked and overstressed all of the time, when I finally had that downtime after being let go, I got really sick, you know?
Hmm.
Your body was
Um,
finally like, oh, I can let my
yeah,
guard down. Yeah.
exactly. I guess my body just didn't allow itself to get sick.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
although I did maybe once or twice, but I still came into work. But I wasn't contagious, you know. Otherwise, I would have been responsible and
Those were
stayed home. But
pre-COVID days. It was a
yeah,
different back then.
it was fine to lick keyboards and stuff back then, but not
Mm.
Yeah.
now. Not that I did that, but people work on their keyboards, and then they eat at their desk, and you know, keyboards and mice have been touched by other people.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, that's not part of the conversation. But
I'm
It
scarred
is
for
now.
life. Yeah, that was wild. I remember you, Marvin, and I were chatting about how, like, I mean, we always encourage, if you're laid off or collecting unemployment, please try to get back out there and make things happen again for yourself and start making an income, making a living. But I remember we were so burned out at the end of that run. We were just like, I think all of us felt that way. Like, this is finally our vacation. We're gonna just, we earned this sleeping in for a few months until we feel up for finding work again.
yeah,
Because that took a toll for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
took some years
Yep.
off for sure.
Hey, that was our joke, right? Like every crunch, like how many years did that take off our lives?
Yeah, Mike. I mean, look how much gray we have right now.
It's true.
You know, you're not even like 40 yet,
Almost there. Pretty
almost,
close. I
but
know, but
still,
I know it sounds like you're still a baby.
yeah, you're still.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Mm,
No, I agree. I can't push my body that far anymore. I don't think I ever
mm,
can again, because those days, you remember the never-ending crunch of 2013 was especially brutal.
that was
Yep.
insane. Yeah.
Yep. But I think that definitely toughened us up a little bit too. It'd
It
be
Hmm.
funny
was
those days that I was in Canada, and somebody'd be like, "Oh, it's 8 o'clock," and I'd be like, "Oh, sweet summer child," you know. But I remember a colleague telling me like they should feel that way because it's a reality of working in the entertainment industry is that there are crunch times, and things happen. But I think that once it becomes everyday normal life, that's where, that kind of crosses the boundary. You start doing some damage to yourself that way.
Yeah,
I'm glad you guys had the time to rest though, because you definitely deserved it.
everyone did.
yeah, everyone's worked really hard. Now I'm just thinking of all the all
We're going
those.
down memory lane today.
It's true. I'm thinking about all like the late nights when they would serve us dinner. Oh, son, I can never forget that pizza, man.
Oh.
I, it fed an army for sure, but I never want to eat that pizza again.
Well, the question is, what was it made of, Mike?
True. To make a pizza that large, bigger than a huge round table. Just
Oh,
Like we took cardboard and then they soaked it
no.
and then like spread some cheese on it
uh,
and then they baked it.
I
That
just
sounds terrible. I'm
I
It
sorry.
wasn't that great.
yeah, yeah, any pizza where like the tomato sauce tastes like just watery, it's the worst.
Mm.
Pizza needs to have
But
flavor, son.
right. But we were fortunate enough that they did cater.
Catering was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
I always thought it's fun when they do like the Jersey Mikes and you get like a little what would it come in like a little like thing? You could get a little sandwich, little cookie, little chips.
Yeah, like a little lunch basket or something.
Yeah, a little
Oh
lunchbox.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was like a little box, yeah.
That's nice.
those are fun.
That
Uh,
was fun.
You had fun.
mhm. Yeah, but it's cool to have like yeah, to do these interviews to kind of reconnect with old team members and catch up with people, see what they've been up to. It does feel like as crazy as it was, we really had like a fun team, like family dynamic that we're trying to kind of cultivate and rebuild now, which is fun. And as we look towards like what we hope to rebuild and be a part of again within the industry.
Well, thanks for getting the feedback together, Mike and Son. It feels really good to make those connections again. And we really did spend a lot of time together, a lot of time together, and have so many stories. And for me personally, that's the biggest takeaway is the relationships that were formed in that time. I think there's nothing more important.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm glad we all got along very well. No one was at each other's neck.
Maybe there's a little bit of that sometimes.
A little bit.
You'll
A
Not
talk
with
little
us,
about
bit.
though.
that.
We were fine.
Oh yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to be pretty much coming to the end of the interview. Any closing thoughts you have, Holly, in terms of like any advice you want to give to people looking to dive into this wild and crazy world of the film and television and game industries?
Yeah, the first would be keep an open mind. A lot of people have like that laser focus, which is good, but when you're entering into a new industry, keep an open mind because oftentimes there's things that you wouldn't expect or you weren't looking for that would pop up. And some of those relationships that you form with people can be the connection to get you, into what you thought you were going to do, or maybe you will learn to get a new love for what you're doing. Keep an open mind, make those connections with people because, as stressful as deadlines are going to be, you're going to remember the friendships that you formed and the people that you meet so much more than whatever, show or deadline that you were working on at the time. And true to very much a Sun way of being, have fun with what you're doing, enjoy and love what you do, and take pride in what you do.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate having you on. Son's always he's got the killer questions. He keeps me on my toes and he keeps me honest. So I'm glad he's my partner in crime and doing a few of these.
Happy to be here.
Always happy to have you, man. Yeah, so that's it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out the next one.